Good afternoon, and welcome to Davos, where we are here with Accenture for a conversation about the leadership imperative in AI. Now, in addition to all of you who are a big part of this conversation, I want to introduce you to our panelists. Right here to my left, we have Paul Daugherty, who's the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at Accenture,
right.
that company. We have Cathy Bessant, who's the COO and Technology Officer at Bank of America. And of course, Fei-Fei Li. Dr. Fei-Fei Li is the director of Stanford AI Lab, the chief scientist of AI and machine learning at Google Cloud. I could probably tack on 7 or 8 others, but we'll leave it there.
Thanks, Jessi.
Now, and to the audience, we'd love to have you join in. So as things strike you, please go to Facebook and leave your questions in the comments section, or you can go to Twitter and use the hashtag #AppliedIntelligence. With that, Paul, maybe you could start by telling us what's happening in AI right now.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jessi. I mean, AI is probably one of the most talked about topics today. And in Davos, I think we'd probably all agree, it's just you go from one conversation to another here on AI. I like to think about it as applied intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. At Accenture, we're talking a lot about applied intelligence because it's really about how do you apply the technologies of artificial intelligence to transform the way you work. And we see it really in 3 categories. One is how do you, as a business or an organization, use applied intelligence and AI to innovate? And an example I'd give you there is work we're doing in life sciences to use deep learning and neural networks to accelerate the process of matching molecular compounds with disease therapeutic treatments and bring treatments to market faster. A real great outcome for business, for people, better health outcomes, innovation. A second category is interaction, with using voice, natural language, all sorts of new technologies to transform the way people interact with machines. And a great example of this is work we're doing in the UK right now for providing services to senior citizens, where we're using voice and other technologies to provide a much more effective and engaging interface for people. And that's the interact piece. And then there's the broad area of transforming the way we work. And there's lots of examples of that maybe we can get into more as we go through the panel, transforming the back office, the way we work as organizations, industrial processes, and the like.
And I want to spend a lot of time on the workforce. But before we get there, I want to know, Cathy and Fei-Fei, how you're using AI in your companies right now.
Well, I think Paul did a really good job of capturing the 3 different ways that we can think about AI. For us, as a tool and as a set of tools, the real power is in using them to make customers' and clients' lives better. So to humanize their interactions, offer them expertise and advice, and enable their day-to-day banking and financial transactions to be easy, smooth, frictionless, and smart. Second thing is to make our company better, to reduce errors, to make our performance more consistent and effective, and to be quicker and more efficient. And then I think the third is to improve all forms of human interaction. People ask me all the time does artificial intelligence replace the human in interaction? And I think no, I think it frees the human for great interaction done well. And really the leadership challenge here is how to do all of that responsibly.
Sure. When you say it frees the human for great interaction, give me an example of what you mean there.
Well, if you're in a call and customer contact center and you're pulling up 5 screens and making computations across those 5 screens in order to provide a customer answer, if we use applied intelligence well, we can be somewhat predictive about the question when the caller comes in. We can automatically look at the relevant screens and make the calculation and make the technical answer quick, freeing time for advice and counsel and problem solving or opportunity gathering.
Sure. Now, Fei-Fei, Google is bringing us AI. You're serving it directly from the tap. You're also using it in your own business. So I wonder if you can map out for me just a few of the ways that AI works inside Google.
So yeah, Google is an AI-first company, and before AI becomes a thing, Google has already been investing in AI for a long time. Even when I was a professor, we have interacted with Google's researchers a lot. So AI, especially machine learning algorithms, has been making differences in Google's products. For example, we have the bread and butter Google search is very much powered by machine learning algorithms that tries to bring the best, most relevant search results to our users. If you look at image search, it uses a lot of computer vision algorithms behind the scene to bring the relevant pictures. Then you get into Google Home, where speech recognition and natural language understanding is the basic foundational science that's powering that. Google Photo is image tagging technology that powers Google's products. So we also have stories of data center energy saving using machine learning algorithms and being able to demonstrate that using machine learning to help the controlling of the temperature and energy, it can save a lot of energy. So there's a lot of different ways of using machine learning.
So it seems to me like the conversation about artificial intelligence has really been gathering momentum over the last year since we were together in Davos a year ago, and is getting increasingly sophisticated. And I'm wondering why it is that we're having this conversation now in 2018. AI on its face has actually been around and in our businesses, transforming our businesses for years, in many cases even decades. What's new about this year?
Go ahead, Fei-Fei.
So I think there are two aspects. First, from a technological aspect point of view, AI is a science about 60 years old, and 60 years ago there is this aspirational dream of making machines more intelligent. And over the evolvement of the past 6 decades, subfields of AI has come a long way, such as speech recognition, natural language processing, computer vision, machine learning / deep learning. So 3 forces have converged to make today's AI truly remarkable in the past few years. They're the computational, the chips and the computational resource, especially like GPUs and so on. Second is the data. We are in a world of data, and data has been driving AI in remarkable ways. And the third one is the algorithms themselves, mostly powered by neural network and deep learning. So these 3 forces have converged around between 2012 to 2015. So we're very nascent in seeing the power of AI. And from the business point of view, I think precisely because of the technological advances and seeing the technological fruition of this, we see every sector of our industries, be it e-commerce, media and entertainment, financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, agriculture, just you name it, start to see the power of this technology. So that's why I think that's why we're hearing so much about it now.
There is no sector that is untouched. Paul, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I think it's really broad-based. I think Fei-Fei did a great job of talking about the reasons behind it. And the other thing I'd say, though, is I think it's really early in the evolution of AI and what we can do with it. So we're going to continue to see advances in algorithms and and more data applied to problems. So I think we should think about this as the start of really kind of an age of innovation in the way we apply intelligence into solving business problems. And in our organizations, we need to set up these learning mechanisms to keep learning these new techniques and building out the foundation to keep innovating with artificial intelligence.
Sure.
I would add one fourth element.
Yeah.
All of this is true and very well stated from a technological perspective, but there is a commercial marketplace that in the last 18 to 24 months has grown up incredibly rapidly, so very steep slope of the number of companies, large and small, who are selling artificial intelligence products. I think in an interesting way, all of the conversation about data protection has made us all just keenly aware of how much data we have, where it is, how it's stored, and therefore how it can be used. Right. So the commercial marketplace has grown exponentially, bringing the power of the technology to actually decision making across leaders who may or may not have a knowledge of the technological underpinnings.
So I want to talk a little bit about how this impacts the workers in the trenches. I think that there are a couple of myths of AI. They haven't proven out to be true yet, but they're prevailing myths. And one is, well, this is going to destroy jobs. And I think we're getting more sophisticated about that conversation as we think about it. And I know Accenture actually has a very strong viewpoint about actually the relationship between AI and people in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an engineer, so I use like simple formulas. One thing I talk about is human plus machine equals superpowers. And I think that's the way we need to frame a conversation about using technology to empower people and enable people to do more. And I think that's the formula that we need to use to really, as we think about business, to reimagine business and use AI not just to improve our business, but to enable people to do their jobs more effectively and enable consumers to do things more effectively. We've done a lot of work around this, and we've identified something, a number of categories of new jobs, 6 categories to be specific, of new jobs that we're not really thinking about yet that we believe are enabled by AI. And there's 3 of those categories that are jobs where people are needed to help machines perform more effectively. Things like trainers to train not just tag data, but to train agents, virtual agents, chatbots in the culture, the personality, the behaviors that they should have representing a company. And then there's 3 sets of jobs related to where machines help people, amplifying people's performance so that they can perform in new ways. We think that's the lens to really look at, the right lens to really look at this jobs issue. It's not about all the jobs going away. It's about how do we develop the right skills in people so that they're able to occupy these new jobs that are being created.
Yeah, I think the effect of AI on jobs is totally, absolutely within our control. And I think that's a very important point. This isn't what we let AI do to the workforce. It is how we control its use to the good of the workforce. And there's no question that there will be different jobs and that jobs will change. But I think there's ample evidence that done well, AI adds to opportunities in the workforce. Add to that the fact that there's already a deficit of technical talent, already exponentially more jobs available than there are tech talent to fill it. And I see no reason that reasonable people and smart people can't use AI to actually stimulate employment opportunity.
What do you think about that, Fei-Fei?
So I think the relationship between technology and society has been an ongoing topic since the dawn of human civilization. There's something in our DNA to never stop inventing. And every time we invent, we disrupt the known structure of the society. So as a AI technologist, I think it's truly important that the society has a responsible conversation about it. Total optimism or total pessimism wouldn't do justice to this. So in this greater context, I think as a technologist, I also really want to emphasize something that Paul was saying earlier as well, is that the technology of AI should be aspired to be more collaborative and augmentative of human capability instead of pure replacement. And
I love that you said that. And the thing that it makes me think about is the way that these things evolve.
Yes.
And you would think, let's take Uber for example, you would think with Uber that there's a great danger that tomorrow somebody is going to go in, flip a light switch, and a workforce is going to be out of work, and cars are just going to take off down the road. But in truth, as the CEO of Uber said at Davos yesterday, it's going to be a gradual process. It's going to take 10 years or even more. And so I wonder, what's the reality about the shift in jobs? What timeline are we really talking about?
I'll start. My perspective is I think it's going to be fast and slow, which
Right.
is maybe a cop-out of an answer, but I think that's what's going to happen. There's going to be some jobs that are impacted very quickly.
Yeah.
It's been happening with automation, with simpler technologies, robotic process automation and the like. So we're already seeing that displacement. But it's going to take time in a lot of industries, even in trucking, which is the one case people always hold up as the trucking industry. Long-haul trucking is going to be disrupted. Right. In that industry, there's a shortage of 150,000 drivers in the U.S. right now. They're short of drivers, so we need automation to improve the productivity of the drivers, the lifestyle of the drivers, and attract more people to the industry. And so that's why we think it's going to be kind of fast and slow. And if you look at the big numbers, I'll use a U.S. number. There's 6 million people unemployed in the U.S. right now. There's also 6 million open job postings,
Right.
which is back to this issue. It's about how do we get more creative as technologists and use the technology to equip these people who don't have the right skills with the right skills for these new jobs, and that's the conversation we need to shift to,
Right.
and have the right investment in education and skilling to do it.
Actually, I want
ahead.
to add to that. There's one thing about AI and machine learning that we don't talk often about is this technology's role in education itself. When we talk so much about reskilling workers, we also look at a very interesting new opportunity of using machine learning for lifelong learning. And so I think there is a really exciting possibility that machine learning itself would help us to learn in more effective ways, to reskill workers in more effective ways. And I personally would like to see more investment and thoughts going into that aspect.
Can I just add one data point to that? And I think that's where leaders can make a difference. If this panel is about leaders, we announced some research yesterday here in Davos, released it yesterday in Davos, but it's available publicly, that talks about the fact that business leaders believe their workforces aren't ready for AI broadly. That was clearly a vast majority, but only 3% of those leaders are increasing their investment in training. That's a big problem because, as Fei-Fei says, the opportunity is to use the technology, use machine learning, new learning platforms to invest in our workers, and in people to make the transition. And we need to see more of that behavior from leaders.
Right. So I want to bring our audience in, and we have a question from Twitter. And the only challenge with this question is I can't read the whole tweet. So, okay, I'll start at the top. The leadership imperative is surely about using AI to drive growth, not just efficiencies. How long before they really shift from efficiencies to growth?
Well, I might start with that one. The two go hand in hand. One thing about driving efficiency is that it facilitates reinvestment, and that reinvestment is driven toward growth. So when we find productivity in certain elements of our back office operations or other things, we reinvest that in frontline people serving customers and clients, providing advice, providing capabilities. So that is really about growth. Second thing is that I would say, based on what I see in the marketplace, there is a pretty even split between opportunities to use AI for efficiency, but more importantly, to, for example, assess prospect opportunities for new clients, to assess new investment strategies for investors. And I think the balance from the beginning, even though sometimes in huge, large-scale businesses like ours, we talk about efficiency,
Right.
From the start, this has been about growth, and we're already seeing those use cases.
I think one
Go
thing
ahead.
that's really interesting to point out is that AI as a technology has the capability to uncover the unused insights and information in our data. There's so much richness in the data that could drive more growth, but without sophisticated machine learning algorithms, it's hard to discover the patterns and the richness of the data. And for example, pixel data or images and videos, there's so much content in that. And using machine learning, we can learn more about what the images is about, what the videos is about, and that would drive new business products and services, and that's an area that AI can help with growth.
Yeah, well articulated. It does lead nicely into a question about ethics and bias as we embark quickly upon this work. How do we make sure that we move fast enough to be competitive, but thoughtfully enough that everybody gets to be included in the future?
Well, I like to say that the analytics and modeling that take data and produce intelligence are only as good as the humans who write them. The underpinning of modeling, until you get to the point of machine learning, the underpinning of modeling is the human who designs the model. And so whatever biases are brought to the table in the human, while we may want them or not, transfer immediately into the creation of the model. And that's why I think governance is such an important, and transparency, to some points I've always heard you make, Fei-Fei, about the need for transparency and understanding of our models so we can assess them for their intended and unintended biases.
Fei-Fei.
So I think this is a really important question, Jessi, and here at Davos I've been in multiple panels talking about this. I think the bias of machine learning and AI is real and comes in two different ways. One is the algorithm, the whole pipeline and system of the algorithm, from data acquisition to data labeling, all the way to the design, sometimes intended, sometimes unintended. So I think there's a lot more care to be given there. This also drives us to think about the explainability of the AI models, the trust of the models. There's also another bias that you were saying is the people involved. Yeah. We talked about that. The lack of diversity in technology sector itself is a bias because our machines reflect our human values. And that's another area that I think leadership should really address.
And if I get back to, I completely agree with all the points. I think that was great. I think if I get back to what leaders need to do, I would say that we all in our organizations, and I think every organization needs to think about, do I need a chief AI officer? And that sounds a little bit trite, and I don't know that you need a single role that's called chief AI officer, but we better have executives in our organization that understand bias and understand the right policies and algorithms and things to use to ferret the bias out. We better have executives that are thinking about explainability and making sure we don't use unexplainable algorithms in processes in our organizations that are mandated to be explainable. Right. And we better have people in our organizations that understand data and are bridging the data across silos and looking at internal and external data that we need to drive the right behavior. So I think that issue of executive leadership and thinking about where do those accountabilities reside in your organization? Do you have a chief AI officer, or at least have people in your organization charged with these things, is an important discussion.
I really think it is. And Fei-Fei, you have been so outspoken about how we make sure, as we're putting those people in place, that they are all not white men, as exist in this field right now. And to the credit of many of the people that I've talked to this week, everybody sees that as a problem. The understanding of how to address that problem, though, is nuanced. I wonder if you can speak to how we extend a hand to more people to bring them in.
Great question, Jessi. So first of all, I think we need to recognize why this problem is important. Why do we need diversity? And I see three critical reasons why we need diversity in AI. One is just like you were saying, that it's a pure economic computation. We are lacking technologists. And while we're lacking that, why don't we tap into all the human resources in the world, right? So that's a pure labor argument. Second is innovation and creativity. So studies after studies have shown that when diverse group of people come together, the solutions are more innovative and are better. The process might be more challenging, but it's a better outcome. Right. And third is justice and fairness. So we've talked about. So I think there are multiple ways. First of all, education itself needs to be supported. We have been doing work through AI for All that is educating a diverse group of high school students, and we really emphasize on the human mission of what the technology is about, because we recognize that when the human mission is brought into the education and motivation of technology, we inspire walks of life, all walks of life, more effectively. We also need to deal with the cultural issue in workplaces, and that is a big issue. Look at the movement that's going on right now in the world. And I would like to see the technology sector really answer the call to that as well.
And it's more important going forward than it ever has been, because we're designing and implementing technologies that impact every element of the way we live and the way we work, every minute of the day and night. And so and if those experiences aren't being designed in an inclusive way by an inclusive workforce, we're not going to create the right future. So I think inclusion is essential for the way we're applying technology and the way that the world's going. And I think there's things to do like embracing organizations, code.org, Girls Who Code, that Accenture's involved with, and I'm on the board of, to start off girls early in their careers to get into technology. And then again, back to leaders need to make a commitment to it, to change the culture. It starts at the top. At Accenture, we've committed to 50-50 gender balance in our workforce by 2025, and we're taking the actions needed to do it, and it applies to the other areas where we need diversity as well. And I think that's, again, an obligation even more important given where technology is taking us.
Well said, and it's a great segue to a question that is coming in over Twitter, which is a really great question. we're having a lot of conversation about leadership. Is there evidence that workers embrace AI or are worried about it? I mean, what do you hear from the people inside your office?
I think there's evidence that both are true.
Yeah.
I think that there's a huge population of people that are hungry for the power and the opportunity that AI brings, and they see it as a way to do what great workers do best, which are take problems and opportunities and solve them or capture them. That is at the heart and soul of what great workers are all about. At the same time, when we use words like productivity, like transformation, there's, again, study after study that prove that what our people hear is, my job is going away. And that's why I think you cannot have these conversations internally to an organization or societally without coupling them or leading them with, here's the opportunity, here's the commitment, here's a practical path to reskilling and to having both leaders and a workforce that is skilled for the future. Yeah. They're terrified in many ways to change, leave behind what they had, move forward. It's our job to provide the underpinning that gives confidence for change.
I think there's a lot of concern out there, but there's also optimism that we see from workers. We just released this future workforce report that I mentioned a few minutes ago. In that report, we asked workers what they thought. I mean, the view of managers and leaders was that there's a lot of concern in the workforce. The results from the workers were that among what was classified as more highly skilled workers, 70% of them were optimistic about what AI brought to them in their job, 70%. And even among more lower skilled workers and classifications, 50% were optimistic. So that's encouraging. I think the question, again, from a leadership perspective, is how do we provide them with better capabilities to help them take advantage and develop more confidence about how they develop their capabilities going forward.
So a final question, and this speaks to the fact that while working in global companies, all of you are based in the US. I had a trip to China on a reporting story this fall and came back and suddenly thought about the ethics question differently. If we take the time that our cultural bias suggests that we should in the US to move our AI development forward in a more inclusive way, do we risk falling behind as China steams ahead?
Well, I think you're hearing silence because it's a tough question to answer. I think there's a little bit of tortoise and hare here. So where are the opportunities and risks for moving quickly or for being a fast follower? Where there are places we should be ahead or where we should be more careful and avoid pitfalls along the way. We see it all the time where we roll out an emergent technology and we're fast and there's an error rate or a customer experience that doesn't meet our standard and we wish we had waited longer. Right. There are times when to capture first mover advantage is worth that risk. Yeah. So that is a very sophisticated question that we should be grappling with in each and every decision we make.
Yeah, I think it's the rate of innovation is going to vary rapidly around the world. I think China's got a lot of advantages in terms of the way that the government and stakeholders and it's engaged in the planning process and the way that the whole ecosystem is working there. So yes, they do have a lot of advantages around how they're approaching AI right now. I'd say in Germany, close to where we are right now with Industry 4.0 and the coordinated multi-stakeholder intervention they've had there, or a discussion they've had there, I think they're moving ahead in a very interesting way as well. So I think there's a lot of different dynamics happening around the world, a lot happening in the U.S. as well. So I don't necessarily view it as a geographic competition. I think all of us, wherever we work and whatever ecosystems we participate in, where we live, need to get that right dialogue, because no one company or no one educational institution, no one government agency is going to get this right. It's about all of it coming together. And those places where they pull it all together are going to have an advantage.
Well put. Fei-Fei, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so interestingly, just last month, I led the Google announcement in China of Google opening Google AI China Center, where I'm leading on the research, basic science research of AI. So first of all, as a scientist, I see no borders for science. I think that any discovery and invention that's made anywhere in basic science and technology should have the aspiration to benefit the entire humanity. And in today's global world, this is particularly true. One thing that's very encouraging of the AI research community, just like many other disciplines of sciences, it's extremely open and global. Every paper that's published in AI conference is uploaded immediately to the internet, accessible to the world. A lot of my own research is open source, and this is the belief that really that when there's global partnership and global exchange of ideas, we benefit everybody. So that is, as a scientist and as a researcher, I truly believe in that.
And that's a note of real optimism. And on that, I want to wrap up our conversation with great thanks to all of you, because so much of the future of AI is going to be dependent on all of us working together.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you,
Jessi.
Jessi.
Thank you.
Thank you.